And when Nani get the VIP, cause I'm a 33. A bunch of important numbers.
3,
A bunch of important numbers.
42,
A bunch of important numbers.
481,
A bunch of important numbers.
5,
A bunch of important numbers.
0,
A bunch of important numbers.
9,
A bunch of important numbers.
23,
A bunch of important numbers.
7,
A bunch of
All right,
important numbers.
that is Chief Crow, Ball Earth Cult,
11,
the world's biggest cult. It is 4/3/2024, the eve of 4/4, which has special significance to people obsessed with calendar dates and attempting to pass themselves off as prophets. And their days are numbered. I have a prophecy, and this one will come true. In 6 days, a lot of these internet prophets will lose their credibility altogether. Now, this is interesting. I don't know if I'm the right market for this, but it looks like I'm being targeted with an ad from SH, one of our favorite episodes. Demand Congress stop assault weapon sales. Like, why am I being hit with these ads? They're wasting their money. Is anybody else being hit with ads that seem to be targeting those of us who, you know, might doubt the veracity of their claims? Are they trying to get back at us, maybe tug at our heartstrings, get us to reconsider? Like, I don't know. I'm not falling for it. You know, someone had once said, they called in and they said that they kind of adopt a hybrid view when it comes to the news. Maybe it's real, maybe it's fake. And I'm going to say, look, they're pathological liars. And that's beside the point. They are liars. If it's a little bit fake, a little bit real, it's all fake. We're joined by Garrett Summers, Buzz Dean, Let's Go, Do Us Impera, G33, Matt X, Elephant Tusks. Yeah, it's time to throw the entire box off the cliff. You know, the boxing of the human mind is so complete that you get out of the box and you're just in a deeper layer of the box. It's super compartmentalized. And the compartmentalization explains it all. And my interest here is in determining who is where in the box. For example, astronauts have to know that all the mass shootings are phony, for example. And the people who are part of the mass shooting psyops, people who even become famous social media celebrities, could easily not know that space is fake. And I think on a need to know basis is what they would, everything would have to be on a need to know basis. That would be their standard way of approaching this, because if somebody knew too much and they had a conscience, it might create a problem. Let's Go says that their mouths are moving, they're lying. Correct? Yep. And even if they're not, for example, you have a lot of people who are honest journalists telling the truth, but they rest upon an edifice of lies. So they're in a subjective universe. And I heard this expression, alternate facts, and I thought, that's absurd. But now that I think about it, it makes sense. You have establishment facts, alternate facts. Neither of them are objective. Mass media does not have a monopoly on truth, and truthers don't either. They're both equivalent belief systems, equally flawed, each taking the screen as an authority. And that's the fundamental thing we've been aiming at here, at deconstructing, stepping beyond the screen. And one of the reasons why I harp on certain orthodoxies is that these reveal something about the believer. And we have to get to a point where we are non-believers entirely, that we know what we know. When it comes to mass media and mediation, I'm not talking about religious beliefs, which are fine. That's a separate category. But the main contention here is that media has supplanted religion, and people approach media the way that people once approached religion. And that's problematic. Joined by Armin Ree, Diana South. Armin Ree and others have been working with NVIDIA and other of these new sites and testing out the ability of some of these sites to auto-generate content. I mean, the music is great. We've tested some of that. And now we're looking at creating video content to supplement some of our work here. And so if you're on the YouTube channel, you'll be seeing some of these early experimentations. I'll be uploading them here shortly as we create them. So what's the main topic today? Space junk a couple days ago. A piece of space junk from the ISS, I believe it was from the Japanese section, crashed through a Florida home. Mysterious object that crashed through Florida home was likely space junk from the International Space Station. Crashed through home on March 8th, 2:34 p.m. 2 pounds. Now we kind of said this would be happening. Space junk didn't really exist as a real anything other than speculation. Nobody was talking about space junk. And then one day, Neil deGrasse Tyson comes out on the Joe Rogan show, and he says, there may be so much space junk in the future that our grandchildren will be landlocked. They won't be able to go to space. And Joe Rogan's like, that's concerning. Have any of our astronauts been hit? Has the ISS been hit? And all of a sudden, Neil deGrasse Tyson drew a blank. And I think it's because he was fed a line, and they didn't really have anything to substantiate it. So over the last few years, there have been various incidents where they talk about space junk. And one of my points here has been that space junk in orbit has a couple different meanings in the bigger picture. You know how I talk about borders, how the right has this thing with borders, the national border, the home border, the skin border, that the anti-vax believes in closed borders and hate the aliens because they're invaders from another world, whereas the left is like, vax me please, open their doors to invaders, get rid of borders, and they want the aliens. So you have this open and closed kind of split right down the middle on these party lines. And when it comes to how they convey the story, they tell it in multiple levels. So xenophobia is attached to alien phobia, is attached to vaxophobia, which is an internal invader. So they're communicating on multiple levels. So with regard to space junk, they've correlated it with misinformation and hateful memes. They've made this correlation with Elon Musk, who's the leading purveyor of space junk. I mean, he's mostly the one who's going to be scapegoated for this. And one of the things that has been raised is, why is the richest man in the world allowed to contaminate cyberspace with mind junk and space with space junk? Because of his privilege, his wealth, he has been able to have an inordinate amount of power to pollute the commons for all mankind. So I think he's a fall guy. He's a fall guy for private space agencies, and he's a fall guy for free speech. And they've allowed him to open up the floodgates to both to make an example. G33 says, I heard a substantial 1/6 quote today, current events. Post it. Post it. Duos in Paris says, I used to think the whole space junk helmet things was amusing, but I never thought it would become a thing. That's right. I was actually suggesting that, and this was in 2020, that if you're not wearing a space junk helmet, the helmet Karens are going to breathe down your neck in the store, glowering at you. They're going to say, your helmet protects me and you're not wearing a helmet. And, that's science, right? You can't even argue with that logic. They will use that. Mask Karen logic applied to space junk helmet Karens. Diana South says, modern religion called Christianity is not at all like Christianity more than 180 years ago. They've managed to rewrite the end times. Yes. I mean, the word Christianity, you can't even talk about it like a monolith. And, and the internet Christians are a whole other phenomenon. And there's this person I follow on Twitter, and he says JFK got shot in the head for us. They talk about JFK like he was Jesus, and it's insanity. And that's fine. You have the right to be wrong. You have the right to be crazy and express those opinions. But this is a person who I started following when he started, and now he's got 17,000 followers. And all he does is he talks about how maybe Barron Trump is the son of Donald Trump and Princess Diana, and Donald Trump's really JFK in a mask. And I'm like, so you're telling me some 80-year-old JFK in a Donald Trump suit impregnates Princess Diana and gives birth to Barron Trump, and this is a good thing? How? And they're calculating that Barron Trump might save them from the deep state at some point in the future. Insanity. How else can you describe this? And that's Trutherville for you. Not all of them, but that's part of it. And that's one of the reasons why we're quarantining. I have to make it a point here that we have to create a breakaway from that kind of stuff because there are no standards. That's what it reveals. There are no standards in Trutherville. Everything's true. It's subjective. Subjectiveville. Reality fluid. We talk about the sea of irrelevance. And the sea of irrelevance is coming from both sides, the mainstream and the alt. Okay, let me go through some notes here. I have my minds.com/infinite plane society. Mysterious object crashed through Florida home with space junk. And one more thing. I recall back in 2020 when coffin makers should have been raking in the dough. Obviously, you're having to sell many more funerals. Well, there was this coffin maker in 2020 who was in the news. And anybody care to guess how old he was? Just random, just anybody put your number in there. How old was the coffin maker I'm about to talk about? And he was the recipient of an asteroid that fell down to Earth, and he basically became an instant millionaire. But I was talking about how there's no examples of asteroids hitting people's homes. Like nobody ever really talks about this. It's been decades. There was some story about some person in Alabama who was hit by a space rock. It went through a roof, bounced off the radio, bounced off the wall like Looney Tunes, and it hit her on the waist. There's a picture of her, and she's got this lump on her side. It's not even a lump. It just looks like they smeared lipstick on her, so it looks like a bruise. Very bad makeup. Like she was hit. This lady was hit by a space rock. Anyway, I was making fun of the story, and within a few days, the story out of nowhere just appears. 33-year-old coffin maker becomes instant millionaire by selling meteorite that fell on his house. And it says, and this is why I think the story's fake. Reports say that 33-year-old man who makes coffins but has trouble selling them has found this thing. Now, again, I'm just suggesting here, there's no reason why he should have been broke if he's a coffin maker. But yeah, he found an asteroid and it was valued at $1 million. Went through his roof. He said it was warm. I don't believe it. And there was another story about some city councilwoman in Canada who claims that a space rock went through her roof and it was on her pillow next to her. So she should have been sleeping with her helmet on. But even that story didn't add up. There were local construction workers who said they saw a fireball coming down from the sky, this massive light, and it lands on her pillow. So this thing is this fireball from the sky, this flaming space rock, punches a hole through your roof, and then it lands on your pillow. Like, wouldn't it have bounced off the bed? Just seems a little fake to me. But they've been building this story for some time. Elephant Tusk says 9 more days until the Civil War movie, which means the Civil War won't start for at least 9 more days. The predictive programming precedes the fake news event that it's meant to prepare you for. There's not usually a huge lag. I mean, you do have concurrent programming. Waco, American Nightmare, was released the evening before Trump launched his second tour campaign out there in Waco and said it was Armageddon, the final battle. They Lie We See says, thank you for whoever gifted a membership. Yeah, I appreciate that because I'm working on some different ways I can create more content for members and grow this channel back to what it should have been from the very beginning. But we'll get back to where we should have been. In fact, today I did join a couple of Discord servers, for example, the FE247, the Flat Earth channel, to see where their heads are at. I'm kind of curious. Isabel Ann says, IPS, the voice of reason in a sea of madness. Yeah, a sea of mist, dis, and malinformation. You have the raft. And the raft is essentially the only place where you're going to have any kind of coherent narrative that isn't scrapped every day. You know, what they do with the news cycle is it's just big news, current thing, move on. Big thing, move on. And we don't let them forget. Like, we pay attention. We know more about the fake news people believe than the people who actually believe in it. You know, they're like, oh, it's really sad this thing happened. I want to give up my gun rights. I'm like, oh, really? How many people died? What was the motive? And they don't really know the details. It's like, so you don't really know what you believe in. Interesting. And so we are objective here. I would consider us to be the only objectivists in the world because Ayn Rand's objectivist society was compromised from day one when they assumed the TV was a window to the world providing objective facts, not some interpretation. G33 says bird flu story in Texas, 1.6 million hens cold. Yeah, 33 elephant tusks, thank you. Dinah South, let's go. Yeah, the guy who had the problem selling coffins during a pandemic. What a terrible coffin salesman. You think those things would sell themselves. Okay, let's see. Mr. Trustworthy says he doesn't really have 17,000 followers. It's just Q code for 17. He has 890. Yeah, the interaction would suggest there aren't that many. And there's a point where it's like, okay, it's delusion and it's very anti-Christian. And it's all about prophesizing Donald Trump's apotheosis. Like they're worshiping the Antichrist. There's no other way to describe it. It's it's some kind of strange cult. And I think on the 5th, by the way, the new Omen comes out. And if you haven't seen the Omen movie, it might be worth rewatching. DT, Damian Thorne, Donald Trump. It's subtext. The subtext there, it's Donald Trump, just like Donnie Darko. And that recent movie Roadhouse with Donnie Darko does the whole one eye thing. We've delved into this a little bit, and we may go back into that soon. But let's keep on track here. Space Force. Space Force has a new logo. It's called what the hell is this? It's like, is that the dog-headed Egyptian god, or is it some kind of pharaoh? But yeah, it's a pharaoh's face. This is Space Force, and I'm like, what the hell are we looking at here? Is this a space agency, or is it a Egyptian mystery school? Which is what I'm thinking now. In a few days, along with the eclipse, they're sending 3 rockets to the moon. Named the mission is called APEP, which is Apophis, which is the god of chaos. Which they also have an asteroid, a planet killer, named for the god of chaos. And again, they said it's going to hit us on a Friday the 13th in 2029, April. April 13th, which will be a Friday, 2029, planet killer Apophis is coming. But the more I look at this stuff, it's all ritual. Everything is laden with symbolism. And it even goes down, as I often talk about, to the appropriation of Old Testament iconography. It's standard, and it has been this entire time. Peace Circle 360 said, would Ayn Rand be an auto hoaxer if she was alive today? Well, yeah, she was a skeptic. That was the whole point. And the objectivist philosophy had everything right from I say an operating system perspective, but they accidentally or through habit, through naivety, I mean, nobody saw it coming. They just assumed what was on the TV was, quote, real, which means all the fake science, all the fake news, all the fake history, the fake achievements. So you have objectivists lauding the moon landing as the accomplishment of reason over superstition and mysticism, of science over religion. And you're like, you just bought into the new religion and you didn't know. And not only that, but you've adopted a, um, a means of approaching media that is tantamount to a leap of faith, which is what you're supposed to be against. So they reject mysticism, they reject religion and holy books as authorities. So like, oh, I'm an objectivist. I'm going to say this holy book is not an authority, but then they take the TV screen as such. And my point here has been mainstream media is the de facto world state church, the worldview it conveys. The TV is the new Bible. If you're believing it on faith without that initial skepticism, you cannot be an objectivist. So I'm not being facetious when I'm saying that auto hoaxers are the only objectivists on earth. Although there may be some people really high up in the capstone in the lie world order who are fully appraised of everything. But there'd be very few. In fact, in that play, 30-minute theater, the newsbenders, they make the point to say that 99.9% of the population would not understand this conversation. And I would say that's true of this one right here. And he says, the rest of them work for us. And I thought that's interesting because it's a closed system. The people in the know and the people who aren't. So now we come in uninvited. We're in the know, but we're not part of the compromise group with the implant device ready to blow up our brains if we talk to the wrong person about it. Like they had something in these journalists in this play where if they spoke about the big secret, they would just die instantly. And they're always being monitored and spied on. So we didn't have to compromise ourselves to get the information that we have. We've just used crowdsourcing and a lot of independent research, not to mention questions. J. Dig says also the Horned Devil Comet 12P Pons Brooks is visible in the night sky and will be visible during the eclipse. Yeah, the devil horns every 71 years. So we have that coming. And now the devil horns, someone had brought something up about this horns, what they mean. And I've been looking into the symbolism of the devil, Baphomet, of even Osiris is sometimes shown with the bull horns, Moloch, the cow thing. So the Christian devil is kind of an amalgamation of a few characters, not really totally biblical, but part like Pan, Satyr. And these are all deities that are associated with the earth, its energies, fertility, and represented by obelisks for the most part. And that's what the rocket is. You can find accounts of Jack Parsons reading Aleister Crowley's Hymn to Pan when they're lighting up their flaming obelisks and sending them up into space, quote unquote. Elvin Tusk says, Tim, have you seen Cloud Atlas? Produced by The Matrix and Jupiter Ascending. So much truth in these films. No, I have not. I'll have to check them out. Someone recommended Jupiter Ascending to me the other day, and someone in the chat was actually like, "Isn't Jupiter Ascending? Wasn't it Jupiter Rising? Something like that." And I'm like, "Let's see if I can find that movie, Jupiter Ascending." But someone suggested it was a Mandela effect. It's like, no, every time you get something wrong, you can't blame the universe and say it shifted. Anyway, I was like, yeah, and Milo Kunis wore braces. 2015 adventure film. I heard this had some content related to the adrenochrome story or some kind of soul harvesting. Oh, here we go. Powerful alien dynasties. Balaam, Titus. Looks interesting. A space opera. I'll take a look. I'm doing research on Netflix right now. I'm always watching. Right now, I'm watching Third Body Problem, which has a lot of interesting connotations for the now. Space communism. Also, I mean, it's aliens, and I keep seeing the red star, which got me thinking about the very first book to describe space communism was called Red Star by these Russian cosmists. Cosmism is this kind of mystic space paradigm where space is the new heaven, more or less. It's where man will transcend and evolve in all kinds of ways. But there's this book from 1908 called Red Star about building a communist base on Mars, perfecting it, and then exporting it back to Earth. Jay Diggs says Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis are allegedly involved in the Diddy story. Now, somebody suggested that Ashton Kutcher is wearing prosthetics and he is appearing on the world stage as Fetterman. Yep, as John Fetterman, United States Senator. So if you look at Ashton Kutcher and John Fetterman side by side, yeah, it easily could be. And prosthetics are really amazing. I was watching this behind the scenes for Breaking Bad, and I didn't know that Walter White, the actor Walter White or the character, he shaves his head, and so when he calls himself, I think it's Heisenberg, he has this trademark bald hat, and I mean bald. He's bald, and he's got the hat and the shades. I see actually murals around town. People spray paint that guy's face everywhere. Breaking Bad was filmed here locally. But anyway, he's not really bald. They put a prosthetic over his head. It's all makeup. Like the guy didn't even have to shave his head in order to be a bald actor. The actor is Bryan Cranston. So yeah, Bryan Cranston. If you look at him on Breaking Bad, that's a bald cap. And I'm just suggesting that you don't. When you look at someone like Ashton Kutcher, like obviously he's got his own hair, but they could easily have put something like this on him. And I find the character of John Fetterman to be entirely unbelievable. And the way he was crying in front of the mic reminded me of Ashton Kutcher crying. So it wouldn't surprise me. But I thought Kutcher was one of the good guys. Wasn't he stopping the child traffickers or something? Interesting. Okay. They are expecting a subpoena in the Diddy investigation. Now, what about this investigation itself? Is anyone here thinking that this is some kind of Epstein level hoax? The Epstein hoax really generated a lot of interest, a lot of traffic. It took in a lot of loosh, and it kept a lot of people busy, and it amounted to nothing. And I'm wondering, is this kind of similar? Is this really some kind of criminal investigation, or is this just a huge nothing burger? Chicken feed. Truther, chicken feed.
Thank you, Multi-Chair Dagger. The IPS appreciates the support.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for feeding the crack Gwyn. And by the way, there's a new Godzilla movie coming out, Godzilla X King Kong. I'm going to have to take a look. Godzilla is a metaphor for the nuke. Jay Dig says, Kucher Fetterman is uncanny, sort of like Bieber Weekend. You got to be careful with the Bieber Weekend thing. There's some Bieber fans who are really mad at me about it. They're like, you just discredited yourself. How? By suggesting that one person could play another and showing a narrative structure in which it makes sense and weird habits of having the same girlfriends and wardrobe, etc. I mean, there are reasons for extraordinary claims, but some things you just can't prove. But that conversation was really more about talking about hyper realistic masks and how they are foolproof and what implications this has, not for the future, but for the now and for what they've already done. Are we already in a deep faked reality? And yeah, obviously. But there's this person, I think his name is Boogeyman, and he frequents Discord servers and he thinks that there were no planes on 9/11, but he believes in 9/11 jumpers. And he's pretty mad about the Bieber thing. Yeah, again, thanks, Multi-C Dagger, and everyone else here who supported for as long as we've been moving this tank across the plane. Armin Ree, yeah, I'll be uploading that AI this evening. I haven't had a chance to listen to it. I had to download it, but we have some in-video content. Should be interesting. Salty Siren says red herring. Yeah, I'm thinking too. I'm not following it with any interest. I think it's probably got the QAnoners drooling. They hear, oh, child trafficking, sex trafficking, and they get all hyped up for some reason. It's that, um, this is the one. They've been waiting and waiting. This is it. I saw one person saying, yeah, the Q drop 8 years ago, they're referring to. This Q drop predicted this eclipse, and that's when it's all going to start. It's like it would have been nice to have known that 8 years ago, nothing's going to happen for another 8 years. Jake the A-hole says the president is a great example of a fake person being played by actors wearing masks. Check out Dana Carvey's Biden impression. It's near perfect. Yeah, SNL in general seems to be some kind of feeder into the political clown shows, which makes perfect sense if you think about it. You had Chris Farley die at 33, comes back as Rob Ford, basically playing Chris Farley, but he's a mayor now. And you have James Belushi died at 33, right? What happened to him? Did he come back? I don't know. Oh, wait. Andy Kaufman, maybe not 33, but Andy Kaufman came back as Andrew Breitbart by all indications. Right wing provocateur, a shady backstory, just came out of nowhere. And I remember his story. He fake died, I think. I mean, I don't want to get into this, but I look at Steve Bannon and I just think this guy's so unbelievable. Not just the stuff he bloviates about, but he looks like a masked, wigged version of Andrew Breitbart. And they talk about the same stuff. And again, he's the one who replaced Breitbart as editor after Breitbart was killed by Obama because he was going to expose that Obama was a communist, as though it wasn't entirely obvious. Just a little backstory, some blue pill news from back when I thought it was all real. Now I'm just open. Look, I have Andrew Breitbart's book. It's like, Excuse Me While I Save the World. And I'm pretty sure it's phony. He claims, or rather, the publishing company was like Illuminati Publishing. But anyway, Dana Carvey, yeah, I think Dana Carvey could, in fact, be playing Biden. That's true. I mean, so could Jim Carrey. And some people have correlated Jim Carrey exiting the stage to Joe Biden falling up the stairs. And I could see that, the physical comedy. And that's one of my points, though. It's fakeable. They're all fakeable. I mean, it's kind of it's like not outside the realm of possibility. And if it's true for one, it's probably true for all of them. I would not be surprised. I've suggested this before. If this wasn't a ruse and a facade from the beginning. That's why I don't advocate voting. I mean, I thought about maybe I'll vote just to be ironic. I'll vote for Biden just because Trutherville automatically votes for the Republican. And it's like, when did the free thinkers become a voting bloc for the GOP? So I might just vote for Biden. Maybe I can vote for Hunter Biden. Can we write him in? Because I do support Hunter Biden, mainly because we have a common enemy. And I'm hoping his legal team unmasks our mutual nemesis. And they don't even know that this guy is the one who hacked the computer. Truman says recent episodes of Hell's Kitchen past chefs wore hyper-realistic disguises to fool new contestants. God Was Bored says, I was thinking of voting for Biden for the same reasons. You see, I don't believe in voting because I don't, I don't believe that this alternate reality game is for me. I'm a non-participant in the Psy-War. So for me to vote would be for me to contradict my status as a conscientious objector. Just like you're not going to see me rioting alongside the Proud Boys or Antifa. I'm just not going to get involved. I might report on it, but I'm not going to throw Molotov cocktails. But at the same time, when it comes to voting, you vote, you're throwing your lot in. But there is a consensus among truthers that I find alarming. So to break that consensus trance, I am going to publicly endorse the worst candidate ever, obviously, Joe Biden. And I might even put it on my screen. I feel bad, dirty saying it. We're riding with Biden. Is that their slogan? But yeah, we may do it. And who's going to get mad? Like someone's going to say, "How dare you vote for Biden?" I'm like, "Oh, you think voting's real?" So I might just do it. Maybe we can get a lot of people to do it. I remember we were trying to organize something before. Anyway, let's get focused here. We have a lot of comments in the chat. Let's take a quick look here. We have 50 people in the main chat, 14 in the backup, 30 on Twitter, 3 on DLive, 3 on Twitch, and a few dozen over there in the various radio streaming platforms. By the way, on Discord, we do have a room open, and I'm testing out the new mic. It's a desk mic, so I'm actually recording in there as well. So if you were to jump into Discord, you would still hear me, and I could hear you on low volume, but I'm not interacting with that right now. But I might jump ship right after. Okay, we'll keep up with this P. Diddy red herring, later. I have my suspicions that it's some kind of contrivance to distract people. Let's listen to the totally normal, not unhinged mainstream media. These aren't conspiracy theorists. Just
even people try to kill people.
He's going to basically burn the house down.
He will unravel the institutions of our democracy.
Draw similarities between Mussolini and Hitler.
Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini.
This is Trump derangement syndrome on full display, just a mashup, and it's pretty bad. Fear grows amid Trump's embrace of authoritarianism.
Is Donald Trump even more dangerous?
Wants to take away your vote. Senate and the House are immediately going to be paralyzed.
People will begin in their minds to censor themselves. They might say, well, maybe I shouldn't say this.
This is the end of democracy.
I think that could be the end of our democracy.
But democracy is dead if Trump is reelected.
Cozy up to Putin that democracy will be at risk.
So there you go. Just pointing it out that when they call you conspiracy theorists and paranoid, just think back on this. When people say that we're paranoid for saying the news is scripted, I'm like, I don't believe in anything that doesn't exist, that I can't prove to exist, that is unfalsifiable. I don't believe in superstitions. So I don't think you can categorize me as paranoid unless you can find something I'm actually, worried or concerned about. And it's not even paranoid to say that we are being watched and recorded and observed all the time. That's just a fact of life. Jake the A-hole says, if you live in a blue state or a red state, your vote's a waste of time if you believe your vote counts. I live in a blue state, California. Yeah, and one other point though, if you vote for somebody who believes in moon landings and mass shootings and terror attacks and 9/11s, guess what? Your vote doesn't count. All right, let's see what else we have here. Now, it's like a football game. It's rigged. You might enjoy the game, enjoy the plays, enjoy the debates and the back and forth, the political theater. Like, I'm not putting my head in the sand. I'm very interested in the whole process. And I think this is going to be a great year to observe who can keep their heads on straight, who's on the world stage, and who's stepped outside of the box. All right, let's move on here. Just going through my notes. Yeah, NASA's probably just an Egyptian mystery school. Best explanation for their obsession with all these symbols and these ritualistic overtones. And this thing they're doing on the solstice is just too much. I mean, sorry, on this eclipse. All right, more of this. This is Bizarre from Dawkins, who wrote The God Delusion. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but he's talking about how he doesn't believe in God, but he's culturally a Christian. And he believes in all the traditions, the holidays, and I guess, the ethos in general. So he's kind of like suggesting here that he's like an atheistic Christian. And it goes on basically to suggest as opposed to being Muslim. So this is just Dawkins, and I had his book The God Delusion, and I got rid of it because of his comments on grooming, basically, where he was just kind of more or less suggesting that he would rather have been abused as a child than raised a Catholic. He quite literally said that, and I was like, this is really disturbing, and I put the book down. But anyway, this is Christopher Dawkins making this really strange point about how he's kind of a Christian, but he doesn't believe in God.
At home in the Christian ethos, I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's truth that statistically the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down, and I'm happy with that. But I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches.
Now, my only reason to bring this person up is that these atheists are faux atheists. They have replaced the Judeo-Christian God, the Abrahamic faiths, with a God construct, Gaia, the globe. Whether you believe the earth is a ball or not is immaterial. The globe construct has replaced God in all of the ways that matter in terms of its functionality, in terms of how its priesthood are able to be intermediators, intercessors between you and this God. And this God's going to flood you and raise the oceans unless you give the priesthood some money, etc. It's an old scam. And this person here is not a real atheist. He's a heliocentrist. He's part of the Church of Scientism. And I would consider this to actually be a branch of the Abrahamic faiths, Christians, Jews, Muslims, and heliocentrists, who are basically just repackaged sun worshippers. No difference. And like the objectivists, scientists have also been reality compromised, reality impaired at a certain level. There's a point where the hard sciences and where real journalism and real anything hits this barrier where basically you're not there necessarily to see the transition where it goes into this augmentation, green screened, augmented virtual reality hyperstitions. Jake the A-Hill says, Tim, I've been having success posting shorts each day. Try it and see what happens. I had a short get 2 million videos. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about just, because I'm always driving around, I'll just sit in my truck. I'll record 1 minute of YouTube safe content and see where it goes. I'm probably going to get more growth from that than relying on these long form live streams if we're trying to bring more people in. Not that we're actively recruiting in that sense, but we do have a lot of interesting people in the comment sections, a lot of interesting callers, and we want to enlarge the pool of researchers in general. And this isn't platformed anywhere on the world stage. The reason why there aren't more people at this level of media awareness taking apart the clown show in a networked way is that they have always been steered into Trutherville. And we're in the process of burning Trutherville down and salvaging what can be salvaged. Here's some good, this is what I call MSM plus, very typical. So the mainstream media version of reality isn't enough for some people, like Stu Peters. He's like, no, they got to be lying. There's more to the story. And the more to the story is always fear, fear, fear. So they think they're awake. No, you're actually still part of the dream world, but now you're having a nightmare. So here is a nightmare pill promulgator, Stu Peters, talking about how, with his guest here, that according to the CIA estimates, within 1 year of an EMP attack, 90% of Americans will be dead.
Stu, where we're headed for right now is a catastrophe that we may not recover from. There is a strong possibility we are not going to survive what's coming. There was a terrorist attack in Russia 2 weeks ago. 3 or 4 days after the terrorist attack in Russia is when the bridge went down. The Russians are openly saying that they have evidence pointing to U.S. and U.K. involvement in the terrorist attack, and that they're going to pursue the terrorists wherever they're found. If Russia comes out and says, we have...
So it's going to be Russia that's going to nuke us, but here's where he gets into what happens.
Officially, on 41. We were unofficially in the war in 39. We are unofficially in World War III now.
He suggests that the after effects of the internet blackout will bring us into total collapse, just like Leave the World Behind, which is predictive programming, despite what Mike Rothschild says. But in my informed opinion on the matter, predictive programming sets you up for what they're going to simulate and fake. So I don't believe that 90% of Americans are going to die. That's the MSM plus take. The MSM minus take is this is preparing us for the big fake movie psyop to come. But let's go ahead and hear a little more of his predictions here about how exactly an EMP. And one more point here. The recent Amazon show, and I think it's about to come out, it's called, I think it's called Fallout. It's basically a public education campaign so people know what Fallout is.
But the average American does not believe this can happen. And when you tell them, they don't believe it could happen. And the reason is because of their pride and arrogance. We're like Babylon. We don't believe we could fall. We're on the edge of it right now. If I were not called by Almighty God to warn people, I'd be out of here. The only reason I'm here is because the Lord has put a calling on my life to gather as many souls into his kingdom.
This is Pastor Rick Wiles. And the comparison of America to Babylon, Tower of Babel, it all ties in to the bigger metascript here. And so this is a MSM plus take, and I'm suggesting that, yeah, this is probably accurate. They are going to do this, but it's going to be done fake. Predictive programming predicts what they're going to fake in the news. It's basically advertising, habituating you, boring neuro pathways, so you accept what happens in the news as real, inevitable, totally not out of the blue. No, we were expecting that to happen. That's where they get you with this programming. And these individuals are all operatives who are compartmentalized for sure, but they're part of the process of spreading the fear, maintaining the status quo. Photo says, why is nobody discussing the types of rockets NASA's shooting off? Even NASA is talking about it. Like, it's not a secret if you're talking about the APEP and how it correlates with the, here you go here. And I was looking at, someone said Pepsi is a reference to APEP, and I looked at this Pepsi truck, and the Pepsi logo does look like a serpent god's eye. Apophis, or APEP, was the ancient Egyptian deity who embodied darkness and disorder. So he's the opponent of the sun. NASA.gov, NASA's going to launch rockets into the moon's shadow, the atmospheric perturbations around eclipse path. And of course, they mention here, of course, that APEP is the god of darkness. So it makes a lot of sense. But again, my point here is this is more than just symbolism, or rather branding or naming these missions to be part of their I guess, aesthetics. I mean, why does it have to be from ancient Egypt? Why can't they come up with something new? It's because this is an Egyptian mystery cult, an Egyptian mystery school. It's Thelema. It's what Jack Parsons was into. It's cosmism, what the rocket scientists in Russia were about. Space is the heaven of the new religion that we're in, the religion of scientism. It's a religion that all the other religions fall beneath. You can be a Muslim, Jew, Christian, heliocentrist, atheist, and you still believe in space. Whereas the other guys are fighting over who has the right heaven, who has the right path. Well, NASA does. Now, the name of the rocket, of course, and the connection with the snake god, this is, again, intentional. We often talk about the symbolism behind NASA's rituals, which these are all rituals. The rocket is an obelisk. 3 rockets will be launched, and I think they're going to launch one at 3:33. And then you also have this, Apophis, the infamous asteroid, which they're going to try to intercept. And they're investigating how they may actually be able to throw it off its course. Just like the movie Don't Look Up. NASA launches mission to intercept God of Chaos. It's 99942. That's its number, which is kind of interesting how the 42 is so often correlated with these things, and the 999, obviously, we know what that is. Sometimes NASA tries to occult things a little bit so it doesn't become too obvious. You can't have the God of Chaos and the 666, one or the other. So they flipped it. And by the way, the astronaut who went, I think Peggy Whitman, who broke the longest, this is a record for like the longest amount of time in space, in orbit. That would be, now it was broken, but it was Peg Whitman, 666 days in space. Like when you look into NASA and the numerology and stuff, it's a dead giveaway where they're coming from. Even more so with SpaceX, which is truly space sex, if you understand the connotations. And the fact that it's Mach 33 to exit the world, that's also part of the symbolism and the programming here. I would even say that space travel, if anything, is simply allegory for ascending to higher states of consciousness. I mean, this is where I wonder if, well, I think I know the truth here. We were talking about compartmentalization, and the people who would have the big picture would be those who have the overview effect. But it's not really an effect from going far away from the earth and being blown away by how beautiful it is. It's when they bring you into the back room and show you how fake everything is. And we have that here. We've had the overview effect. Okay, let's see here. Paunchy Lefty says the sun is eclipsed by the moon. Right. It's going to be a widely viewed event, although I read some reports here that the weather's going to screw it up for a lot of people. But the question here is, are the prophecies going to come true? All the calendar, what do you call these individuals? The gematria and the calculator crew, who have multiple calculators, multiple calendars, and they can essentially fabricate a prophecy and aim it at whatever target they want. And then they post it on Twitter, and it's like, wow, something's going to happen. No way man could script this because these numbers. And it's always, I think it's ridiculous. And I'm really examining the premise here. That's why I made the prophecy that on 4/9, a lot of internet prophets are going to be discredited. Dewis in Paris says, remember when the nuke was purported to have rung like a bell last time they fired nukes at it? I saw something like that somewhere. And it could be another example of what we call MSM plus, or fake actually. This is what I call fake. Pyramids on Mars, monolith on the moon of Mars, which is something that was said by Buzz Aldrin. He said, there's a monolith on Mars. Remember that? So look, if you believe in NASA, if you believe what astronauts say, then you must therefore believe that there is a monolith on the moon of Mars, on Phobos. And if you don't believe that, you're not scientific. In fact, you're a flat earther. If you don't believe, and I'm talking about you space believers, you glurfs, globers, gloobers, if you don't believe that there is a monolith on Phobos, you're you're a conspiracy theorist. Because listen, this is Buzz Aldrin.
On the moon. We can visit other people with their habitation. We can keep track. If there's something very important to be developed from the moon, I'm not sure what it is right now. And I sure think we should identify what it is for America to make such gross expenditures again for human habitation on the moon. We can help. We can join with. Together, we can.
Now, he's about to get into it. Now, I'm saying fake because it's this. Mars, as far as what they've represented to us, is fake. Yeah, there's a red star, there's a light in the sky. The object of Mars is fake. But if they get you talking about pyramids on Mars, water on Mars, ice on Mars, well, this is sort of like a used car salesman or a car salesman. If they can get you talking about the paint job, the color of the car, they've already sold you on it. And fake would be artifacts said to be on the moon or on Mars that get you talking about it as though it's assumed to be real. It's like a loaded question. So you can debate, does the moon Phobos have a monolith? And your debate is predicated on the existence of Phobos as a landable object with satellites going around it. This is why I said too that you can be a truther, or rather an honest journalist reading a teleprompter, and you're still a liar because you're speaking atop an edifice of lies. Now let's listen to Aldrin talking about the monolith on the moon of Mars, which I'm not obliged to believe in it because I have a BS filter. But those who believe in the outer space program as advertised and presented by NASA, yeah, you have to believe this. You can't opt out. You can't cherry pick.
Explore the moon and develop the moon. We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there? Well,
that was the story of 2001 Space Odyssey, but that's another example of how our concept of space is actually templated off of science fiction. And in my research on cosmism, Russian cosmism, their philosophy about space as this new heaven is based upon science fiction, as well as some older mystical concepts. They invented it out of whole cloth. But yes, there is a monolith, and when people find out about it,
they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there? Well, the universe put it there. If you choose, God put it there.
God or the universe or NASA's Special Effects Department. Like, what's more likely? They want you to think God. The truthers, by and large, want you to think that the eerie coincidences in predictive programming are still things to be bewildered by. But that just totally like, wow, I'm taken aback. So many coincidences predicted this event. God must be inspiring these events, or there must be some supercomputer behind the scenes. It's like, no, you're simply hiding the culprits. You're actually shielding them. You're saying, oh, there's nobody behind the curtain. The Wizard of Oz is actually a wizard. No, it's fake. Alan Neufeld says, if space isn't real, do you think the sky above is a dome? I don't know about the word dome. I really don't. I mean, a dome would imply higher in the middle. It would imply that we are somewhere close to the middle. And if it's not a ball, I don't know if we could presume that. I'm thinking flat earth, flat sky. And the dome concept was inherently limiting, which is why I rejected it. If you say there's a dome, you say it reaches the ground. Where? Antarctica? At the edges of the map they've showed you? So if you do believe there's a dome, what's the curvature of the dome and what's outside of it? It raises more questions. It basically doesn't answer any questions. It replaces the globe as a closed model, but instead of having answers about what's above supplied by science and NASA, they are reaching for the Bible, and they're conveniently not even asking what's beyond it. Just heaven, basically. Or water. And if you really get into the Bible literalism of it all, the earth is on a disc under a glass bowl on a footstool. underwater. So it's way more complicated anyway. But as far as space isn't real, what I mean by that is if we remove the assumption of the Earth being a disparate, discrete object in space floating, then then we can't say that space is below us. That space is not below your feet. Space is only up. In other words, I mean, one of the more radical shifts about this idea would be that there is up and down. It's not simply depending on where you are. It's not all relative. Everything is not in motion. There is an up, there is a down, if this is correct. And if the Earth is a fixed immovable plane, space would be what's up, then we can dispense with a lot of the assumptions, but we don't have the answers. And we certainly don't have enough information to say there's a dome or an enclosure. And I hear some debaters who debate for years and years, and their only talking point is that you can't have a pressure system without a barrier, which is a way of saying, I believe there's a dome, without saying it. And you don't have enough information to infer that, and it's kind of a ridiculous argument, and it never goes anywhere. I listened to a recent flat Earth debate on Jeranism versus he was hosting, but it was Fight the Flat Earth, who I apologized to on April Fool's Day, and he thought I was serious. I was like, I'm sorry I called the Earth anything other than a globe. NASA never lies. And he's like, for reals? I'm like, you'll just believe anything. It's like April 1st. But I listened to this debate, and they're still stuck on like flat Earth memes from 2015. Like, don't planes have to raise their nose up every bit or dip their nose so they don't go off into space? Just nonsense. Funny memes. I don't feel the Earth moving. Well, if you mischaracterize their model and how it works, you're not going to win in a debate. But the debates are pointless anyway. Why would you debate somebody whose argument is on faith? You know, you're arguing against the faithful. Like, you could be a well-versed atheist on logic and reason, but you sit down and you debate with a true believer, you are not going to undermine their belief in God. Similarly, you can have all the facts on your side to suggest that there's no reason to believe everything that NASA presents, and the people who believe it are going to continue to believe it. There's nothing you can say that will undermine their faith in the globe, which is the God construct. Okay, let's move on. Going through my feeds here. Monoliths on Mars. And again, my whole point is you believe the system, you believe what's in their entire package. It's like it's kind of like you can't cherry pick from the Bible. You believe the Bible, you believe it all. You believe NASA, you can't say, well, you know, they faked Apollo 11, but the space station, that got me, that's real. That's inconsistent. And you cannot say, I don't believe in monoliths on Phobos going around Mars. I'm like, why? One of the guys that went to the moon told us his credibility is unimpeachable. Everything he says, you have to accept. If you're going to say that Buzz Aldrin would lie about a monolith on the moon of Mars, then how is that different than saying he would lie about going to our moon? Jake the A-hole says, Fight the Flat Earth is a regular on Jeranism's channel now. Imagine having Craig on as a regular guest and having all his terrible subs in the chat calling you a flurf the whole time. I never liked the word flurf. It's awkward. I like glurf. I'd prefer shape agnostic. I'd prefer skeptic. I'd prefer media critic. But these individuals believe everything on the news, so they're worthless anyway when it comes to we're going to debate who has a better grasp of reality. Well, it's like, no, you guys are totally in the cult. So your big picture opinions don't matter. Like, we get it. You believe drawings, you believe cartoons, you are a believer, not a knower. It's just it's so far from science and they can't see it. They see the screen as scientific evidence. Iron FE says NASA believers stuck on nonsense. For the most part, it's just so reinforced. I watch anything on Netflix, it's always reinforcing. It's always science fiction. If it's not science fiction, it's always going to reinforce the dominant scientism of our time, along with all of the ways of reintroducing spiritual concepts. They're dressing it up all as science, digital transcendence, etc. Now, I talked to Fight the Flat Earth once, and I just realized that, we're not in the same weight class. Like, it can't get anywhere. The best I could do was demonstrate his visual illiteracy for the benefit of our own subscribers. That's the best I could do. I realize he's impaired, and that's fine. I'm not trying to wake him up or anything. And the point of it is, we're showing how, look, I can show him a picture of an ISS transit, and he says, yeah, that's amazing. Somebody snapped a picture of it going in front of Saturn. And then I'm like, oh, look, this NASA's astronomy picture of the day. NASA promoted this thing. NASA's like, yeah, a guy got a picture of our ISS going in front of Saturn. This is amazing. It's on our website. Look at this. And Fight the Flat Earth is like, yeah, that's amazing. And I said, oh yeah, it was fake. It was exposed as a hoax a month later. So I was just one after another giving examples of how these individuals can be tricked and fooled as long as they think it's coming from the authority of NASA. It's funny. But when I brought up the Challenger explosion and how fake it was, he started crying like a traumatized victim of mind control, MK Ultra, which you were. You had that Clockwork Orange experience in school if you were a child when the Challenger explosion happened. They peeled your eyes open and made you watch it and think about that teacher dying. Everybody around you cries, big tragedy. Yeah, well, he cried when I mentioned that thing was a hoax. He wouldn't even hear it. So my point of it is, they exist in a closed system. They cannot exit the MSM box. They will criticize MSM plus, but they will always be MSM. They cannot see because they don't have the overview effect. And most people in MSM plus can't see. They're barely even able to contemplate it. And it's not about the enormity of such an absurd claim like the earth is flat. It's about the enormity of the lie that people can't get. And the lie is so big that it's safe to say, in fact, I think it's the truth, there is only one government. We only have one religion, one government. That's it. Everything falls under this big umbrella. Iron FE says, giving known globe cult shills and obstructionists free airtime to spill their bullocks is not helpful. No, it's not helpful because the people they're bringing on to debate are presenting foolish arguments. And they aren't questioning the media itself. It's a gate-kept conversation. It's totally fake and contrived. And I think it's safe to say that the flat versus round is controlled opposition. It's a controlled dialectic. We don't have a model. We have something complete. And same thing, look, there's a correspondence here, a correlation between the debate about the geography, the physical world, and the world view. And so auto-hoaxing, auto-hoaxology, this skepticism is attacking the worldview or internal construct of it. Whereas the flat earth question is questioning the physical reality of it. And I think that it's actually more critical here to see through how we arrive at worldview than to even start debating about what the world is. Because it's about where do you get your information? What are your sources? My sources are what I can see and feel and sense. And your source is that plus what those guys from TV told me and what their crappy graphics are trying to convince me of. I mean, if the graphics were better, if they had waited, let's say they waited to start the space program until like the 90s, I think they would have no critics. They may have, if they should have taken their time with it. I think they jumped the gun because they're evolving the special effects as they go, and that's where they're giving away a lot of their tricks here. Their movie magic. Joined by Mango Penguins. Thanks for joining. Mango Penguins saw a flying, burning obelisk sent by SpaceX just the other night. We started 1 hour and 5 minutes ago. Now, I'm either going to stop in 5 minutes and go for a run, or I'm going to stick around. But we have so much to go over, and I barely scratched the surface here. Let's see if we can catch up on a few things. We've been talking about fake space and the predictions. Oh, here's a good one. Al Gore. You thought Hiroshima was bad. Imagine 750,000 Hiroshimas. Again, this is Al Gore, who might be, here we go, might be one of the world's, I think, preeminent doomsayers. And notice, he's a doomsayer. We're in the end times. He's preaching about how this is pages of revelation, but he's not a religious person. This is someone coming from science.
But we're building up the amount of heat trapping capacity so much that today we trapped as much extra heat as would be released by 750,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding on the Earth every 24 hours.
So are you
750,000 Hiroshimas every 24 hours? That's a lot of nukes. That's what climate change is doing. That's pretty bad. Send that guy some money to pay for his electric bill and his cooling expenses, his air conditioning bill for his 15 mansions, and his private jets. But also send him some money so he can appease the volcano god or whatever he's going to do. All right, we have, yeah, that's right. Al Gore invented the internet. He's yeah, the Al Gore rhythms. Yeah, Al Gore Leone. He's the mob boss of the EPA, Environmental Protectionist Agency, and it really does function like a mafia, the climate mafia. But I remember when Inconvenient Truth came out, I saw the movie, I saw the pictures, and it's like Florida's underwater. It was completely impossible what he was presenting. And I saw it, and you know what I thought when I saw that movie poster? I thought, yep, that's us. Man did that. Like, I was so immersed in the mainstream worldview that at the time Inconvenient Truth came out, there was nothing implausible about it. I'm like, I'm surprised it's not worse. It was like, I could watch like horror movies, dystopian movies. I could hear music with really dark visions of the future and how man is so terrible. Misanthropy. And none of it fazed me. I just assumed, yeah, man's terrible, man is the worst. I internalized. It's internalized misanthropy. If you are an environmentalist, now I'm not talking about somebody who cares about nature and animals. I'm talking about an environmentalist, capital E. You have internalized misanthropy. Yeah, that's right, Lean Dion. Gore has a friend named Blood. I saw that. I don't know what's up with that. Blood and Gore, I remember that. And David Icke, who I tend to take as a reputable source. In one of his books, he claims that Al Gore is followed around by a refrigeration truck full of blood bags, that he's a vampire, that he's not a shape-shifting reptilian like Bill Clinton and these others, but he's a literal vampire, and he's just gorging on blood all the time. I don't really necessarily believe that. I just sometimes I'm like, I don't believe that, but that's not the same thing as saying I don't find it believable. Like, I don't believe Hillary Clinton runs around with some little girl's face skin over her face with her friend in the ping pong dungeon. Like, no, I don't believe that. But am I saying it's not believable? No, that's entirely believable. Okay, so Stu Peters has a guest, says 90% of us are dead when the internet goes down. 33 people were displaced following Easter Sunday fire. Yeah, there was a fire in Newburgh the other day, and 33 people were displaced. A lot of people are talking about the bridge collapse still. But if you're treating it like a whodunit and not a what is it, you're wrong. You're on the wrong side of the screen. It's not a whodunit, it's a what is it. It's a psyop. It wasn't done by ISIS or some guy who was vaxxed. It wasn't done by a DEI hire. No, it was a psyop, a plot twist, an episode. Lawsuit reveals that Facebook has sold its users' private messages to Netflix for $100 million. Now, remember, Netflix co-founder, first CEO, blood relative of Edward Bernays and Sigmund Freud. So they get beneath the hood and they know how to market and manipulate the mass mind with perception management. So now they know what's in your private messages, and they're feeding this into who knows what, and they're going to make movies that are, I think, the most impactful types of propaganda they've ever done. When we're talking about predictive programming, concurrent programming, yeah, it's pretty deep. It's very nuanced, but they're going deeper. Illusion Warfare says, just to be clear, there's a big difference between a truther, with an F, and a seeker of truth. Searching for your subjective truth is healthy, and you should climb that mountain. Buying into a thing because you've seen a TikTok video with eerie music is just clown emoji. And I agree. We are seekers. We seek to know. Believers are lazy, and they're satisfied with weak explanations and bad CGI. Couldn't be more of a difference. We talked about this. Space junk crashes through man's house, almost hits his son. He almost had a good lawsuit going. Maybe he does. Says a Florida man may have to sue Japan after rubbish from the space station crashed through his house. So it wasn't NASA. It was JAXA. And the fact that all these nations fake it the same way with the same bad special effects tells you that there is only one government. There is one monolithic, world-spanning mind control media apparatus that creates this immersive illusion that we all live within. I asked Grok, which is Twitter's generative artificial intelligence chatbot. It has like ChatGPT without the guardrails kind of built into it. So I'm like, what is Twitter's chatbot going to say about the IPS? And I'm just going to read a couple of sentences here because it's thick. The Infinite Plane Society is a philosophical movement that challenges traditional perspectives on media and human knowledge, founded on the rejection of the epistemological inversion of interpreting the world through the lens of a mass media filter. The society does not necessarily propose the Earth is an infinite plane, but rather emphasizes that the observable plane is all we can perceive, and assuming a boundary for the sake of creating a model is illogical. Goes on to say, the society criticizes the dome proposition, which posits that the land we see is all there is, without attempting to answer what lies beyond this supposed dome. And then it goes on to say, the society is known for its live stream discussions, podcasts that delve into various topics such as the nature of reality, the media, and the flat earth theory. Although associated with the flat earth movement, its focus is broader and encompasses a critique of how information is disseminated and perceived. Now that was from Grok. Quick breakdown of the IPS and what we're about. Anyway, I put that on the blog. And when I asked the same question of ChatGPT, it's like, the Infinite Plane Society is a podcast that suggests the Earth is flat, and we know that's ridiculous. Just look at Wikipedia. It's like every other statement has to offer some kind of correction. Like, in other words, it's gatekeeping, it's guardrailing. And the term guardrails has been applied to AI management of information, which is fascinating because that term was not used in media until we started using it to describe gatekeeping operations, to keep people guardrailed, to keep them on the world stage. We didn't get to everything, but I will have some time tomorrow as well. Got a tip here from Mr. Trustworthy. Provo, Utah was founded by 33 Mormons. He says, I was watching Mark Dice's John Levy character do a broadcast about Provo, which was founded by Pop Quiz. How many Mormon families? Yep, 1849, 33 families. Interesting. Here's Fight the Flat Earth. I said, you are totally right. The space station's real. It's not just a movie. It's actually up there in a place called outer space. I'm sorry for debating you about this. I should have just trusted you and your judgment at NASA. NASA never lies. Of course, April 1st. And here he is, for real. Like, I almost don't want to tell him that I was making an April Fool out of him. It's easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled. He'll probably stick to it He will refuse to believe that I didn't convert. All right, anyway, I have to go run a few errands. Well, actually, I'm running on the treadmill. I'm trying to maintain a certain routine here. I will be starting earlier tomorrow and staying later, but I've been somewhat disrupted in the last few days shipping stuff out. So those of you who've been ordering art and books, I appreciate it. I've made multiple trips to the post office today, and I have one more quick trip here to make before the night's over. And if you're on the newsletter, I will send a link to the Discord server. We've been active in there, and from now on, I'm pretty much in the Discord server, usually away from keyboard, but we're going to be a lot more active there in the future because we have a lot of great conversations. So get on the newsletter, ips.monster, and I'll send a link so you can join. This is Auto Hoax, or GTFO, Chief Crow.